When we think of horrific crimes, the image of children is rarely the first that springs to mind, especially as statistically children are more likely to be victims than perpetrators. How is it possible that minors commit such horrific acts that their names go down in the annals of crime? In this video, we delve into the dark reality behind some of the most feared children in prison, young people who have pushed the boundaries of the unimaginable for deeply disturbing reasons. Join us. Mary Bell. In 1968, Mary Bell shocked Newcastle and the world when she became one of the youngest murderers in modern criminal history. Aged just 10, Mary committed her first murder by homicide, a young boy in an abandoned house. Despite the seriousness of the crime, this was only the beginning of her grim life. Shortly afterwards, Mary and her friend Norma Joyce Bell vandalized a nearby nursery school and left notes pointing to the murder. The police dismissed the incident as a childish prank, but just months later, Mary killed again. This time, she and Norma lured a 3-year-old boy to a wasteland where they obtained him and mutilated his body. During questioning, Mary showed a shocking lack of remorse and tried to blame another child for the mutilations that only the murderer could have known about. In December of the same year, she was found guilty of manslaughter after serving her sentence. Mary was released from prison in 1980 at the age of 23. Christian Fernandez. The case of 12-year-old Christian Fernandez is as disturbing as it is tragic. In 2011, Christian was placed in the care of his younger brother, who was only 2 years old. What should have been a moment of brotherly care ended in an act of deadly violence. Christian killed the baby. The investigation revealed a dark past that had shaped Christian's short life. At the age of 2, he had witnessed his stepfather's suicide, had been repeatedly sexually abused, and had lived in an environment where violence was the order of the day. These factors had an extreme influence on his behavior. Although the crimes committed by Christian, atrocities, which include the torture of animals, are not justifiable, his case raises a moral question. How should one deal with a minor who has committed such brutal acts, but is also the product of a desolate environment? The jury decided on a lighter sentence, and Christian was released at the age of 19. Robert Thompson and John Vanballs. The murder of 2-year-old James Bulger by Robert Thompson and John Vanballs in 1993 is still one of the most horrifying cases in Great Britain. The two 10-year-old boys kidnapped James from a shopping centre in Buttle, England, after convincing his mother that they were brothers. What happened next is hard to believe. Thompson and Vanballs took the boy to a remote area where they tortured him in unimaginable ways. They poured paint into his eyes, hit him with bricks and an iron bar, and finally left him lying on the railway tracks to fake an accident. The horror was not yet over when the security cameras the perpetrators were identified. The country was shocked to learn that the killers were children. Both were arrested and charged with murder, and although they were released with new identities in 2001, their case continues to spark debate about the rehabilitation of minors in prison. Eric Smith. In 1993, 13-year-old Eric Smith committed a crime that shocked the state of New York. With his red hair, freckles, and innocent-looking face, hardly anyone could have imagined that this boy would be responsible for the brutal murder of a 4-year-old child. The incident occurred as Smith was riding his bike home from a summer camp from which he had been expelled for bad behavior. On the way, he met Derek Roby, who was alone. Went to the same camp. Smith lured the little boy into a nearby forest where he attacked him and, in a horrific act of brutality, threw a large stone at his head, which killed him. The search for Derek began that same day, and only a few hours later, his body was found. The community was stunned when they learned that the perpetrator was a child. During the trial, it emerged that Smith was a victim of bullying and suffered from pent-up anger and frustration. Was sentenced to at least years to life imprisonment, and to date, he has been denied parole several times due to the seriousness of the crime. Jasmine Richardson. In 2006, the tranquil Canadian Matacon became the scene of a crime that could have sprung from a nightmare. The 10-year-old girl Jasmine Richardson and her 2-year-old boyfriend Jeremy Allen Stank planned the murder of Jasmine's family, her parents, and her 8-year-old brother. It all started when Jasmine's parents ended their relationship with. Jeremy disapproved of a man who claimed to be a 300-year-old vampire and whose fascination with violence was deeply disturbing. Frustrated by her parents' refusal to accept their relationship, the couple decided to kill her so they could be together. Inspired by the film Natural Born Killers, they carried out the murders in a calculated manner. On April 23, the bodies of Mark and Deborah Richardson and their youngest son were found in their house. Jasmine, who was initially thought to be a missing victim, was arrested the following day along with Jeremy. During the trial, It emerged that Jasmine's main motive was a desire to break free from her parents' rules. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison, the maximum sentence for her age, and released in 2016. Her release sparked controversy over whether such a short prison sentence was sufficient for her crimes. Joshua Phillips, in 1998, the murder of 8-year-old Maddie Clifton, shocked the city of Jacksonville in Florida for days. The entire neighborhood searched for the girl who was found playing near her house mysteriously disappeared. No one could believe that Maddie had been murdered by her 14-year-old neighbor Joshua Phillips, and her body hidden under his bed. Joshua claimed it was all an accident. Maddie was accidentally hit by a baseball bat while playing in the garage and he panicked, but she understood forensic evidence showed that Maddie had been punched and stabbed multiple times, completely contradicting his version of events. The case was solved when Joshua's mother noticed a strange smell in his room and discovered Maddie's body. Joshua was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Lionel Tate was the youngest American to be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in 2000. And one at the age of 13. The crime was as brutal as it was mysterious. Lionel was accused of killing 6-year-old Tiffany Unick by inflicting a series of injuries that experts described as comparable to those in a car crash. Tate claimed he'd been playing wrestling and was inspired by moves he had seen on television. The extent of Tiffany's injuries, a fractured skull, broken ribs, and internal lacerations, indicated that the act was intentional and violent. In 2004, the verdict was overturned and Lionel was released on probation. However, he was later arrested again for other crimes, leading many to question whether rehabilitation was even possible in cases like his. Jordan Brown. In 2009, year-old Jordan Brown was charged with the murder of Kenny Haar, his father's fiancée, who was 10 months pregnant. According to prosecutors, Jordan shot Kenny in the head with a child's gun as she slept in her Pennsylvania home, and then went to school as if nothing had happened. The obvious motive was Jordan's resentment against Kenny and her pregnancy, as he saw his unborn half-brother as a threat to his place in the family. Although circumstantial evidence was against him, the case sparked controversy as there was no direct evidence, and the question arose as to how the justice system should deal with such a young defendant. Jordan was tried as a juvenile and, after several years of appeals, was released at the age of 18 after serving his sentence. His sentence in a juvenile detention center despite his release. The case remains one of the most controversial in the history of the United States legal system. These cases probably leave you speechless, or I wouldn't be surprised if you cross your arms and frown as you process what you've heard. If that's the case, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because we have many more shocking cases to share with you. We would also like to hear your opinion, so let us know what you think of this video.